All right. Well, we'll go ahead and start. I imagine that most of you have figured out who I am. Dr. Fox. I'll move my chair because I like to move around. Maybe I can try to move this fan so that it can share a little bit.
I'm just going to be back.
And move that paper. I don't know where that paper came from. All right. So when I do presentations, we always start with ground rules. I have 2 pages of rules because rules are important. So rule number 1, nothing that we will talk about, nothing that you want to discuss is off limits. We can talk about literally anything. However, if it's completely off topic, I might need to bring it back. So, but yeah, number 2, don't name any people in your questions. Don't say, I want to ask, I've got a friend, Jason, and he has a problem. We all know it's about you anyway. So, shaming and intolerance will not be tolerated. Right? So raise your hand. I guess actually I can totally read it off my screen. I don't know that. Make sure that you raise your hand. If you have a question, I will ask.
Am I allowed to name drop my dad when it comes to?
Well, you can say your dad.
Well, when it comes to explaining the hardships of 2 people with ADHD having an argument.
Yes.
Because that can be a lot worse than having an argument with a neurotypical person, actually.
And I will be able to speak on that. I'll speak to that rather.
Mm-hmm.
Well, both. All right.
Sorry, could you go back 1 step? I just got it. Sorry.
Oh, yeah. So
Limit.
Yeah, there are plenty of chairs.
Yes, got it.
Well, yeah, there's a reasonable number of chairs. I'm gonna be really sad when the room is full.
Is it okay to sit in the front?
Yeah.
Oh, okay. Join.
Could I sit?
Yeah, of course. Yeah.
Sorry.
So,
You.
One. I'm gonna take care of this. Okay. Did it forget? Nope.
you can even set your thing on the table if you need to.
Yay!
Okay. I'm really flexible.
So, might as well
Okay. All right. So then we will continue on. So second set of ground rules. Only the presenter, that is me, is allowed to interrupt. No one else is allowed to interrupt anyone when they're speaking. I can interrupt all I want because I need to make sure that this actually gets where it needs to go. That's the rule. Number 6, remember, yeah, if you say something in a public setting, everybody's going to know what you said. So that's on you. You can say anything you want, but you do need to accept that you said whatever you said. And then the last one, if you'd like to speak with me privately, my email is at the end. You can talk to me privately. We can set something up. I used to have a Twitter that I would talk to people with, but I don't know if I want to have a Twitter anymore. So technically it exists, but I don't use it.
Dumb question. Is it all right to like hold up your hand and just wait, or?
That's actually, yeah, that was
Okay. Yes.
number 4. Yeah, that's actually the ideal.
Yes.
Yeah, no, you're good. So, we've gotten here. I am Dr. Lazarus Fox. I have a PhD in clinical sexology. So, I think it was last month. I don't remember. I actually finished my thesis last summer, but I had to wait forever because somebody with neurodivergence was on my doctorate panel and didn't finish very simple paperwork because they had anxiety about it, or I don't know. So it took a year to actually get my PhD after I was completely done. So yeah, I have ADHD. I am one of the people. So although I do not have every possible problem in ADHD that could be had, I speak from personal experience as well as my professional experience of working with people who have neurodivergent needs. And I am, in pretty much every way possible, a gray fur. So I've been in it. I've been in the furry fandom since The Lion King was new. I had friends who were furries before furries had individual personas.
I was born in 1995.
Okay. I don't believe that was a question, but okay. You're fine.
It's a long time.
So, you know what, we'll go back there. So I've got my notes on here. And then, yeah, again, at any time, if anybody has a question, feel free to raise your hand. And I will do my best to get to everyone. If we start running short on time, if there's anything I really want to say, then I'll mention that. But we'll see what we get. So the point of this conversation is not to portray toxic positivity about neurodivergence. Like I said, I have ADHD. I have dealt with a lot of very frustrating side effects. I have impulsivity. I have I have overcome rejection-sensitive dysphoria. I have intense executive dysfunction, and I'm highly distractible. But at the same time, I don't think that I could be happy in my life doing what I do without my ADHD, because I've learned how to use it in a way that makes me functional and lets me do crazy things that most people think sound impossible. Like moving to another country and giving presentations at furry conventions. So, yeah, for most people, the only meaningful effects of neurodivergence that they notice are negative ones, because they're so used to the problems of the people around them saying, why don't you just? But, right, the point of this conversation is to help you to understand what's going on in society with you and to learn how to exploit what you're good at. Exploitation is awesome within yourself, not usually outside of yourself. So, right. So the first section that we're going to talk about, topic, I guess, is right the battle for homeostasis. Why we have a problem. So the ideas of having options, choices, selection, right? That diversity. Well, sorry. Those things are things that everybody agrees. Like, I want choices, right? Oh, I went to go and get ice cream. I want choices. Oh, I went to go and buy clothes. I want choices. You don't want choices?
No.
Okay. Sorry. That's fine. I guess you should never say always. You should also never say never, especially if you saw Fight. American Tail. There's a whole song about it. He's a mouse. The thing is that when people who tend to be more conservative identifying hear the word diversity, they tend to be afraid of a disruption to the status quo. The status quo being, of course, what is the world as they understand it. They don't want anything to change because they are afraid. Right? Okay. So, when diversity can be labeled as a threat to one's understood reality, those who feel unsafe may vilify it and attempt to insulate themselves from what they perceive as an undesirable change. Right? And in a nutshell, that's that's what's happening. That's why those of us who have neurodiversity struggle when trying to interact with people who are neurotypical. So people who identify as being outside of the social norm will typically ask why that's a problem, and that's a fair question. And unfortunately, there is a simple answer, and that is that everybody understands the world that they individually live in, right? We all have our own rules for how the universe works. The sciencey word for that is a schema. It doesn't matter if you know that word. They maybe learn it in doctor school. But people will tend to have a baseline level of fear of anything which will interrupt or will disrupt their typical reality as they currently understand it. And that's not just a thing for normies or neurotypical people. We all do that. Yeah?
No, I was going to say that reminds me a lot of every time my mum would change everything in my room because she thought it would look more orderly, and I couldn't find anything.
Yeah.
I love that a lot.
Yeah.
Oh. How many of you can raise your hands. I think it's funny. I don't think it's too very small. How many of you, right, when you were, especially when you were younger, your rooms would be a wreck. You could find anything.
Mm-hmm.
But as soon as you were told
Literally
you had to clean it
everyone.
up, you couldn't find anything anymore, right?
Yep.
So much that. Yep. I wasn't specifically going to talk on that. If somebody has a question, you can ask it. But right, so the desire to keep things the way they are is called homeostasis. Homeostasis is very important. Homeostasis is very good. Anybody here familiar with Maslow's hierarchy of psychogenic needs? Probably haven't heard all those words.
Sort of, it's like social needs, physical needs, like food, shelter, all that. You've got like, is that the one we've got? Social
So yeah,
needs.
so yes, that's good. Anybody else want to add that?
Maslow's hierarchy is a theory about human needs. At the bottom is security, then it's food, then it's, I think, social, well,
That's right.
ah,
You're close. You guys are good. So the bottom one are actual physiological needs for survival. And so that includes air and water. It includes the ability to relieve oneself from things that have come into the body. It includes sex, which is interesting. However, sexual relationships does not fall in the bottom, but sex itself does. But it also includes homeostasis. So Maslow had stated that the idea that you know what to expect out of life is as fundamental as breathing. So when people get caught up in wanting to keep things the same, it's very understandable. It's not because they're bad, it's because they are a sentient being. And if you didn't know if your house was going to explode in 5 seconds, it would be really hard to worry about if you're going to go to work. Right? You need to know that certain things are going to be the same. But unfortunately, like a lot of things, you can have too much of a good thing. So, unfortunately, in a drive to maintain homeostasis, to keep things the same so that, right, so I don't have to worry about what's coming, a lot of people will actually lose track of their personal goals and ideals because, right, fear wins out over progress. And I think that a lot of you have probably experienced that personally, right?
Mm.
It's not an us versus them thing. It's just an understanding what happened. When we can understand what's happening, sometimes we can make a change. So, yeah. So the thing about maintaining normality, a very frequent example of how this works is people who are religious, and it doesn't matter what the religion is, will often start as an outsider community. Right? You see that over and over again. And these people start out as the problem. Right? Nobody wanted Christians in the area. Nobody wanted Muslims in the area. Nobody wanted Jews in the area. Nobody wanted, right, anything. So it doesn't matter if it's what it is. It all started out as a problem. But as time went on, the community was able to get a foothold. Enough people come into it, right? Nobody wanted the furry community, right? They were like, oh, those guys are weird. And, right? And nobody really actually took the time to understand. They just said, oh, it's different, which means, right, not safe. But over time, people in those persecuted communities learn to support each other, and they create their own standards and expectations. We have our own here in the furry community, right? We have all of the things like, oh, well, if you go to this, you treat people this way, right? We have all of our rules about consent and who you get to hug, right? And all of these things, we have understood rules. So, again, same as everybody. The problem is that once people begin to have that community where they feel that they're understood and they feel safe in their own personal little bubbles, they start to develop an idea that if this thing is good, then this other thing is better, right? This thing is a harder version of that initial thing, right? If it's good, so especially we'll go back to the rhythm. If it's good to not, rape people, let's not have sex. Like, okay, maybe that makes no sense, but it follows a line of logic. So they say, oh, right, so there's a lot of religions where they have specific, most holy, venerated people don't do that, right? Monks, priests, right, like the Dionysus, virgins, the Vestal virgins, right? Anyway, over and over again. If this one thing is good, then a harder version is better. And the problem is that once they start doing that, they begin to judge each other on who's reaching this higher standard that is generally arbitrary. And go ahead.
Hi, sorry, I don't understand what you mean when you say like a harder version, harder and what?
So, right, so the rule, we don't rape people,
Yeah.
is, and then they will say, you know what, not only do I not do that, I don't have sex at all. Which would be
It's
much harder.
from like a personal perspective.
Yeah, it would be a much harder standard to live by, right? Because it's a human need, level one, Maslow.
Would one way to say this also be like, maybe a very bad example, but like, if you're supposed to build a tower, then like everyone starts building higher and higher tower until it's just unreasonable.
Right, and
Or bigger statues, or bigger and bigger.
right. So actually, I think that's a great example of the tower, right? And so the thing is that in communities, you judge each other on who has the highest tower. You're like, oh, you can only build like the original required tower because John's got like 3 times as high as the original tower. But it turns out that John's tower actually is missing like half the supports because he didn't have material or time or the capacity to actually build the right tower. Right? And maybe Sarah's tower actually does have all of those things, but basically nobody can do it, and nobody needed to do it, but they all judge each other on who has the best version of this thing that nobody needed. And then from there, because they've got this community that's going on, right, they will start to judge people who are not even part of their community and say, oh, right, they don't do this. Oh, men like to wear wigs and then tell stories to children in the library. Yeah. Right, they make up rules and then they project them on others, and if you don't meet the things that I think I'm supposed to do, then you must be a bad person. Right, so that's basically how tribalism works. So, right, here we go. Right, so there we go, yeah. Outsiders are labeled as being non-compliant. Right, even though the people never even wanted to be part of that. But the originating party gets to just take over and set the rules. And we see that over and over again. America is a great example, but honestly, I don't think there's a country that doesn't have that. Maybe Finland. I always like to think out Finland as like utopia. I don't, probably not. But that's the one they're always like, oh man, but like in Finland? I know. The irony is that these outsiders, these people who are now labeling others as outsiders, as a problem, as all of these negative things, started out as the outsiders, as the problem, as all of the negative things themselves. So part of the risk is that we need to watch out for that in ourselves. We need to make sure that as we feel more comfortable, as we feel that we are able to be ourselves in any way, that we don't project our personal values onto other people and say, if you don't do things the way that I think that they should be done, you are necessarily a bad person and a problem. There are going to be exceptions, like everybody needs to actually be nice to each other. And if you're not nice to people, right, that's a problem. We need to be compassionate, not do things that others haven't consented to. But those are very simple and basic and not about, right? If you were to go down the street and start, spreading rumors about all of your neighbors that don't have fursuits, right, there's problems with them. Right, that would be a problem. So,
Very funny.
what?
It'd be very funny.
Not before long. Right, so you're just saying that it might be amusing, but honestly, right, any community, right, when you saw like the dumpster fire that is Florida start happening, we were all like, wow, I can't believe that happened. And we kind of laughed. And then it kept going. And it stopped being funny really quick. We can make fun of Florida man, but the entirety of Florida, right, that's just sad. Except Disney World, it's a little bubble. Maybe Universal next to it, I don't know. So, here we go. So, okay. When there's a fear of diversity, the primary defense is, like my cat?
Yeah.
All of the pictures I use are non-copyright, non-royalty. So I don't steal any pictures for my presentation. And if you really want my notes, if you write me the email at the end, I'll send it to you, and there are links to all of the original source pictures.
Oh, great.
Right? Because consent's important, and that's how they consented. Or if they didn't, then we just went ahead and went with the mildest consent. And by we, I mean me, I guess. So, I like to describe neurodiversity as an ice cream parlor, and I don't know, is that even a thing? Do you guys say ice cream parlor?
Yes.
Okay.
Yeah, we do, yes.
I was like, in America, like we have those kind of a lot, not really, but like a Baskin Robbins, or there'll be a lot of like mom and pop shops. They're like that. Cool. So I'm glad you understand what I'm talking about. But the thing is that neurodiversity is no more of a defect in mankind than an ice cream shop that has more than just chocolate and vanilla. Right? If you think that an ice cream shop having more choices is disappointing, then I suppose this probably isn't the right deal. But, similar to how an ice cream parlor works, people who are neurodivergent could be really similar to that chocolate and vanilla. There actually are. There's a store in America called ConFuzzled, and they literally just have chocolate and vanilla at soft serve.
boring.
and it's kind of like an ice cream truck, and they'll give you lots of toppings, so they only have those two flavors. And honestly, I find that disappointing. I don't go there. Well, I especially don't go there because I live here, but I didn't go there when I lived there. But some neurodivergent people might be really similar to just that plain chocolate or plain vanilla. So like vanilla with cherries or chocolate with peanut butter, right? But it's almost the same. A lot of people say, okay, I can work with that, right? Oh, well, I was gonna put it on pie, so vanilla with cherries is still all right. Or like a dessert pie, I don't even know, like a crumble, I don't know what you guys. I know, I go to the store and try to buy pie, and they're like, there's meat in it, like, okay. But some of the variations are a lot more dramatically different, like mint chip or rum raisin, right? Where it doesn't even seem like a variation on that vanilla or the chocolate. But to have a well-run ice cream shop, you want to have as many flavors as possible, right? And that's how it is with that neurodivergence, that we have so many different kinds of people, and the more you have, like the more enjoyable an ice cream experience is going to be. Even if you only want, right, a scoop of vanilla, that's all you want, that's fine. But having those specialty options, like a vegan gelato, will mean that there are people who previously weren't able to even go to that shop, now are able to enjoy something, right? When we're able to appreciate what's special and different about us, we can use our talents and our abilities to help everyone, ourselves, the other neurotypical and neurotypical people who have issues that maybe they didn't even know they had. Right? Classic examples are like Nikola Tesla, Albert Einstein.
Elon Musk.
I don't know, I might go blank, but you know, there's a lot of historical people who were almost certainly neurodivergent, although it's impossible to fairly test them after they died. But the things that they do because of their differences made the world incredibly better. And that's something that we can do for ourselves and others. The biggest problem is that we keep, even ourselves, we've learned to try to divide the world into the binary choice of normal and weird. Right? But there's no such thing as normal. Normal is a setting on the dishwasher. Go ahead.
Also, normal changes over time. Pink used to be a manly color until like World War I, when it was like too easy to be seen in the World War, I think, and so they changed, and then it became a girly color, basically. So it switches over time.
Yeah, they wouldn't actually put boys in blue back before that. There was a very superstitious reason. I don't remember exactly. So I didn't make these notes as easy to tell the difference between what I was doing. I think that's right. But the thing we need to do here is we need to learn how to work around our challenges with our own skills. I actually did have a patient once come in, and they talked to me and they said, like, it doesn't even make sense to talk to you because you're good at everything. So you don't even understand what it's like. I thought, okay, that's definitely not true. And my poor wife, because I spent about a week like pointing out everything, I was like, oh, I'm bad at that too. Like, oh, I'm bad at that. Like, why are you doing that? Like, somebody told me I was good at everything, and I'm worried I'm becoming arrogant. So I want to make sure I know everything that I'm bad at. But it turns out that if you don't spend your life worrying about all the stuff that you're not good at, and you spend your life doing the stuff you are good at, you're pretty happy most of the time, and you're way more productive, and you don't worry nearly as much. The things that I'm bad at, include remembering anything
Mm-hmm.
except random facts. However, I can only remember them when I need them. I cannot remember them when, like, I can test like nobody's business. But if you say, tell me all the things you know, like I have no idea what anything is. But once it's written down as a question, like, what was this thing? Like, oh, it was this. Right? I'm bad at remembering to brush my teeth. It's really bad. You don't raise your hands this time. Right? But who here is terrible at remembering to brush your teeth or put on deodorant? Or, I said don't raise your hands.
Sounds pretty from number five.
Right? And that's okay. Is that a question? Okay. The thing is that we need to learn how to work around our challenges with things that we're good at, right? Because there are things that you will always remember to do, and maybe you remember to do it because you had a reminder, right? Like when I take the test, I can answer the question because they gave me a clue, like, oh, right? What happens, what's it called when a person exhibits this behavior? Like, oh, it's that. Like, or what do you do? Like, how do you talk to somebody about this? Like, oh, I can, go on and on. But if they say, like, name everything you possibly would ever do as a therapist to help people, like, I can think of like 3 things. So, things that you will normally remember to do. You will remember to go to the bathroom, right? This is one of my best ones for personal hygiene stuff. For everybody who has a problem with any personal hygiene stuff, find a place where from the toilet you can see all of the things that you should be doing that you constantly forget, like your toothbrush, or your hairbrush, or your deodorant. And you will have to keep it out so you don't get to have one of those fancy magazine houses where everything's beautiful and like in the medicine cabinet, because you'll never remember it in the medicine cabinet. That's okay, right? We learn about ourselves and we accept it and we move on. So we use what we are good at, which is your body says, like, if you don't use the toilet, it's gonna be a problem. So you go, and then you're like, oh, I see it. And yeah, go ahead.
When I do that, my mum moans at me for leaving stuff out. We've all been there. Yeah. I
Yeah.
can't win. Chaos piles.
Well, have you explained to her that you do it because otherwise you don't remember?
Yeah.
Have you thought about moving?
I do leave. I'm a bit of a shit. So I do kind of
But still, the principle is true, even if there might be other challenges that would get in the way of that, right? If you forget to take your medicine every day, maybe you have a glass of water, some kind of a vessel near your bed, because you get thirsty in the middle of the night. If you put that, keep your medicine next to the glass of water on the bedside table. Yeah, it does take up space that you would probably have used for your phone or maybe your book if you're old. I can't even make time for books anymore. Everything's an audiobook now, right? But if you have your medicine on that table, you are dramatically more likely to say, "Oh, right," because you take the glass and you start drinking as soon as you wake up, and then you're done, and you're like, "Oh, great, just take it," because it's not about. And this was the thing I had to explain to my wife. Like, it's not that I'm gross. It's not that I don't want to brush my teeth. It's that it doesn't even occur to me until I'm driving. I tried keeping my toothbrush in the car one summer. That was bad. That was really bad, especially in California where I was living at the time, because I used it the first time and it was great. And then 3 days later, I realized that I had forgotten to brush my teeth again. And it had been in a car that had gotten to, I don't know, like 38 degrees, whatever that would be. And it was not great. That tasted really bad, really bad. Do not keep your toothbrush in the car. But, right, just keeping it on the, on the counter, on a shelf, in the bathroom, when you get up. That'll help nearly every time. There was a time when I ran out of toothpaste and I didn't immediately grab. So this is the thing, right? Your impulsivity, if you have impulsivity, you can use it as a skill. Right? You can, because right that impulse like, oh, I should get the toothpaste. Like, no, I'm going to finish what I'm doing now and then I'll do it later. How many of you say that you're going to finish what you're doing now and you're going to do it later, and then later never happens because you completely forgot?
Yup. Yup.
I used to when I stopped.
So
4.5 times a day.
So
Oddly specific.
So the thing is to give in to the impulsivity when you say, I need to do that right now. Right. And it'll be a little bit weird, and it'll take the people around you a little bit of time to adjust to the fact that you have to drop everything and finish. But if you don't do that, right? But go grab the toothpaste if it wasn't in the drawer. That was the thing, is there was no additional toothpaste in that bathroom. So I had to go to another bathroom to get it. And it took me 2 weeks before I brushed my teeth again. Because it wasn't there. I don't keep my toothbrush on the counter because it's sticky. So I have the toothpaste on the counter and the toothbrush is in the medicine cabinet because I can pick up the toothpaste. Right, but it wasn't there, so I didn't see it, so I didn't even think about it for 2 weeks. And I hate that. And it's not because, right, it's not because I'm gross or I want to be disgusting. It just didn't even cross my mind, right? And so make sure you keep the tools where you can see them, but give into your impulsivity. It's not only bad.
I mean, like, first thing on that, every time we did something that diverged from the norm, I was in a conservative household and it was weaponized against me because they didn't understand. And I think it's only now that I'm 30 and I've been outside of kind of like that environment for about a decade now, and it's only now that I'm starting to just kind of accept these things and not feel like I have to explain it, just exist. Which makes a lot of sense.
Yeah. Yeah, good.
I mean, I failed, but I tried to design my life so it has like a minimum amount of steps and things I have to do for each thing. So if I need to like get rid of the garbage or stuff, like don't make an elaborate system with like 20 different things. Like make it 2 steps.
Neurodivergent people tend to be really good at efficiency.
For other people, not for me.
I don't know if this is unique to me or anything, but I usually experience that it's easy for me to remember something if forgetting it will bother people I don't hold a grudge against. So it's like, if I'm going out with someone, yeah, I'll shower before it. But if I go 2 weeks without being around other people, yeah, that shower isn't going to get touched at all.
All right.
Just water efficiency.
Yeah, sorry if that was too much information.
No, that's fine. I was trying to decide how much I was going to say lead into your own anxiety. Because anxiety is kind of not ideal. But sometimes it can help. And actually, on that, right, we do things when we have pressure to do them. Because pressure is something that reminds us, it helps us to want to do something. So that's an example of that. My wife and I are okay at keeping the house clean. It's not like a wreck, but it's not great. But when we know we have people coming over, we will clean that thing. And so COVID completely ruined it. We've finally gotten back into it. But we try to have people over at least once every other week so that we do a deep clean of all of the public spaces. And it works. Like, we keep the house clean because we don't want to embarrass ourselves.
Yeah, me and my wife do exactly the same thing. Like, parents come over once a month and the house looks like a showroom for that day, and then it just steadily devolves back out to being.
So you might need to have more people over.
I need more friends.
You're in the right place.
Another thing that helps a lot, which isn't necessarily personal skill, but technology, right? I absolutely consider, like, my brain is in 3 pieces. There's the part that is in my head, the part that is in my wife's head, and the part that is in my phone. Right? And those are the 3 places that my brain lives. And so if I can't remember on my own, I will set an alarm. There are an annoying number of alarms on my phone. And the rule with the alarm on your phone is you can't turn it off until you've done the thing. You can't turn it off and say, I'm going to get to that. Because a majority of the time you will not get to that.
That's why that works. because I wouldn't stick to the rule or think, oh, I can do that in 10 minutes, and then never.
Well, notice that it doesn't happen, and then don't do that the next time. Like, wait, no, I tried that, it didn't work. Go ahead.
I almost found technology to be a bane.
I'm sorry.
Oh, sorry. I've almost found that like technology could be a bit of a bane when it comes to like keeping like notes and to-do lists and stuff like that. Because it's just so easy to just swipe it away and kind of be done with it.
Right, well, and so that is a thing. So this is a time you would not give in to the impulsivity. And if we are mindfully aware of what's happening, right? Because I absolutely did that for years and years. I did that until I realized, like, oh, that's not helping. Why am I doing that? Why did I even bother to make a reminder that I need to take out the trash? If it doesn't even occur to me, or if as soon as I see it, I'm like, oh, I'm not home right now, so I'll do that when I get home. Right? Like, okay, nope. And it drives me insane every time because I forget what that calendar alarm is on the top of my phone. And I will be driving home from work and I'll be like trying to just like look really quick because I'll see it again and I was like, oh yeah, I already knew that. Right? But if I keep it and I leave it, it will drive me insane and I will do it as soon as I get to the house instead of completely forgetting, because otherwise I absolutely wouldn't forget.
I'm wondering, might just be me, but I have a very bad habit of thinking of, oh, that's an interesting thing to do, I should do that. And I just keep adding on more and more things or techniques or books or obligations, and then I just get completely overwhelmed and I have to cancel 90% of them. Is it just me or does anyone else?
So that's pretty common.
You're not alone.
Yeah.
Sometimes, yeah.
It's not a bit similar to that, yeah.
Oh,
So, you know, that's pretty common. For that, that would be like another conversation to have about setting healthy boundaries. And on top of that, besides it would be nice or whatever, all those things you said, there's also, if I don't do this, people will hate me. If I don't do this, I'm not good enough. If I don't do this, right? And there's a lot of guilt that also will add to your list of other things. And all of those will lead to being overwhelmed and unhappy. But I don't think that we possibly have to, we super do not have time to go into an extensive conversation about how to have healthy boundaries. But I should add that next time to my next set of conversations is on how to set and maintain healthy boundaries. But Google it or write to me and we can talk about it. So, yeah, other things I do, I book non-refundable holidays because that way I have to do it, or I'm super frustrated that I spent all that money and didn't do it. But otherwise, like, well, it's come, in America I had to do that too to make my bosses let me go, like, look, I can't get the money back. And they're like, ah, fine, you can have the time off. It's nicer here, I like that better. But right, if you don't set it, if you set it and then you can't take it back, you're like, well, I better finish planning for that because otherwise I'm out 600 pounds, I'm out whatever. So, let's see. Right. So I basically said there, set traps for yourself to make yourself successful. So put the things as a reminder, have people come over, set the alarm on your phone, and you're not allowed to swipe it until you do it. And now that you've had this conversation with me, you're going to think about it every time and be super frustrated when you swipe it. You'll swipe it, and then you'll realize, and you'll be like, damn it. And you might not remember that time, but you'll remember the next time before you swipe it. Because that's how our minds work. But yeah, you need to be an expert of you. Find out what motivates you. So maybe having people over doesn't matter, so that's not going to be the thing. But there are things that motivate you, and you need to pay attention to that instead of what's wrong with you. So was there a question? No? Okay. So, right, and then my last section, right, thriving because of the neurodivergence. Right, hyper-focus is the best. When you're doing like 10 million things, as long as you can set boundaries with your hyper-focus, you can say, okay, I don't get to do this thing. If you don't start down the path of, right, learning how to do, right, hand-thrown pottery before you finish cleaning up the other thing, you'll finish the other thing. You might be really frustrated about it. You need to accept that it's okay to be frustrated while you finish. It's also okay to say no and to stop. You don't have to finish things just because you started them. It took me until about 5 years ago to be willing to not finish a book. I'm like, I know I hate this book, but I started it. The only exception was when I read Moby Dick. It's like the first third. I really feel very strongly that book was written by someone with autism, because it changed from a book about a story to a book about how to go whaling in the 18th century. And it was like a textbook. It wasn't like the story was completely gone. And so I did give up on that. That was the only book I ever quit in the middle until about 5 years ago. So like for 35 years. It's okay to stop if you don't like something. That doesn't make you a bad person. That doesn't make you weak. That doesn't make you stupid. That does mean you need to accept that you might be out money. You might be out time. But it's actually worse to keep doing something that you hate. So, yeah, so there we go. Okay. So the question that you all need to ask yourselves, besides what makes you motivated, is what are you good at? And for a lot of people, the first thing that you're going to say is nothing. And that's not true, right? That's because you're used to having people who don't appreciate your talents tell you that you're not doing the things that they want you to be good at. If you come to tomorrow morning's class, I'm going to talk about how there's no such thing as laziness. But you also might have thought about something and then immediately said, no, that doesn't matter because that's stupid. Did anybody think of something really quick and then think that was a stupid answer, so it doesn't count? Okay, that's all right. It's not a stupid answer, right? We've been conditioned to believe that things that don't fall into what everybody else wants is pointless. But once again, like Nikola Tesla, like Albert Einstein, it was the people who wanted something that was different than what everybody else wanted that changed the world. And maybe you won't be quite so famous or have quite so big of a difference. But it doesn't make it not useful. It doesn't make it not valuable just because it's not what everybody else wants. A lot of people avoid trying new things because they did, right? They used to. You guys used to try it. We used to try it, and everybody would tell us like, "Don't do that. That's stupid. There's no reason to do that." Right? Right? Take the family job or do this thing that everybody else says. Just do this, and everything will work out. And but I hate that. But eventually, right? We give in. We don't want to keep fighting. Are you guys all familiar with My Little Pony Friendship is Magic?
Yes.
I'll talk about this at work, and sometimes it gets weird because people don't know what I'm talking about. Right? You guys remember the Cutie Mark Crusaders? The Cutie Mark Crusaders were like the fools. They were the kids, and they were trying to get their cutie marks. And the way that people in that show got their cutie mark was by trying everything, right? That was their particular thing, is they would help other people to get their cutie marks because they were going to try, so they would try, right, all the different things, just like what this guy in the front, I don't know what your name is, but, right, he said, yeah, you.
Big guy,
Vincent? Okay. So right, just like Vincent said, right, all these things and get overwhelmed. But that's actually the goal. You want to try everything, right? That's what Shakira said. Because you're going to find things that you are good at. And the law of averages says you'll be bad at a lot of them. But as you find the things you're good at, then you can lean into that. And maybe you don't want to do it forever, and you don't have to do it forever. Nothing needs to be forever. But just like the Cutie Mark Crusaders, right, you want to go through and you want to try all the different things because you will find and you will earn your cutie mark. Wow, that's like a bad ending. I'm not done yet though.
Oh, what's the way? There it is. So like, I find that I get very disappointed in myself if I don't. Oh, I'm not good at something. And how do you think is a really good way to overcome that? Because I found things I'm good at. It's just that when I'm trying, I can find trying new things very intimidating because if I'm bad at it, it can be quite difficult. And it's hard not to inflict that on myself with my sensitive like something. So what do you think is a really good way?
So I think that for that, a really good skill would be to actually write down as many things as you can that you've tried. So that you can actually say, and it'll be hard at first to be really objective, because often when we're not amazing at something, we'll think that we were just the worst.
Yeah.
When in fact, we were often, it's not bad, right? Like that's not really like my thing, but it's okay, right? Like if you were cooking and you were gonna make a pizza, and it tasted okay, you'd be like, oh, that was a terrible pizza, I shouldn't make pizza anymore. You didn't burn it. It's not that you couldn't perfect that and get better, but it wasn't your first try. Following the recipe maybe didn't go super great, right? So the thing is, if you can objectively explain to yourself what happened, but make a list and say, oh, okay, right? Your Cutie Mark Crusader list. You go through it and you write down all the things that you tried, and say, this is what happened when I tried this. This is what happened, and you're not allowed to say really blanket statements like I failed or I did awful, or even I did good. You have to actually explain what happened. I tried to make a pizza. It looked pretty, but it tasted pretty bland or kind of gross, right? But you have to point out all the good things. Like it looked pretty, I did get all the ingredients right, or maybe you didn't, right? But from that, that's when you learn this is what I need to do differently. Instead of these blanket statements where you say, oh, I wasn't perfect, so it was a failure. And I don't know you in particular, but everybody does that.
Yeah. I think the picture's a good example there because you might say, oh, the dough was crap, but the sauce was really good.
Yeah.
So maybe baking's not for me, but cooking is.
Well, I was going to actually touch on that same thing. So I find that I'm just not very good at baking because I don't like using exact measurements. I don't. Maybe it's a small tactile, I like to eyeball it. So I find I'm better at cooking than I am baking. So yeah, it's that kind of line of thinking.
But I think that really like writing it down, having it listed, and I say especially writing it down for those of us with the ADHD side, people who are more autistic or who are both will tend to remember the details a little bit better, how things are. But having it written down will help you to really look at it objectively because you can look at the entire list of things. And honestly, even if you're bad at a ton of things, you can look at that list and say, I'm really good at trying things.
Okay, I like it.
So I agree with trying to look at it objectively, but my mind was very, very depressed for a long time. And the problem is that then objectively became just being mean. And the thing that helped me more was to think, how would I talk to someone else rather than like, so if I like talk to you, I mean, I wouldn't say that you're a dum-dum that can't make pizza. Like that's very, very
I
mean.
am.
I don't know you, so yeah.
It's a really good cook.
I mean, the book Feeling Great is very good. I just try to remember, like, yeah, now I know not to do that, and 1 out of 10 is infinitely greater than nothing out of 10. And if people ask me to do something, that's a very good sign that they appreciate me.
Yeah, if something's worth doing, it's worth doing badly.
I love the fact, I think Edison made like 10,000 light bulbs that failed before he made the light bulb that works. And I don't know history, so maybe he's a liar or something, but I just like that principle in general. Picasso made like 10,000 sketches of Guernica before he like started making it. Like, failure is the requirement for success.
Yeah, my last album, I had 5 different drafts that I ended up scrapping because I wasn't happy with it. Each one taking like months and months and months. So it is worth sticking to what you feel right to make.
Yeah, go ahead.
What you find in that same vein is if you start something, a lot of the times you'll be taking advice from people who have perfected that art. Like, for say, artists and art thing, you will see, wow, that's a really good art piece. I want to try draw it. And you will look at your first drawing and go, that's crap.
Yeah.
But you're judging yourself on the perfection.
Yeah.
You will get there.
I've had
You're
that.
also
But you have to start somewhere. You can't just start at perfection.
Yeah, you're also judging yourself on what works best for someone else.
Exactly.
And that doesn't mean that you're not going to be good at it. But what works best for someone else might not be what works best for you. So we actually didn't mean to
Okay.
wrap up. However, you haven't said anything, so go ahead.
Hi. So hyper-focus is all good, you know, it's great when you're in hyper-focus, but kind of going along with the idea of the trying stuff, it's the things that require practice that I really struggle with. Like, I don't really have that much trouble with, like, trying something and not being just good at it, but it's when you have to do something every single day, you know, to get better at it, and you know rationally that you need to kind of do it, but instead your mind works on this hyper-focus, nothing at all, hyper-focus, nothing at all. Do you have any like tips or anything for trying to
Yeah.
like do you lean into that? Do you find a way to try and practice stuff?
So
Like-
I personally try to find, so that's the motivation thing. So I've been meaning to write the article that I based this conversation on for like a year and a half. And to make myself do this, I scheduled a presentation. And maybe I finished this article about 2.5 weeks ago. Right? And it was as it came closer that I found the motivation. Like, nope, I have to keep doing, like I have to make the time and sit down and do this. But if you have the hyper focus, then you can generate that focus in yourself if you can find motivation. So if you set, like I said, setting the traps for yourself. Because I really wanted this article. I think that it's a really worthwhile article. If you write me, I'll send you the actual article that I based it on, which is actually a lot less conversational than this because there's no two-way communication. But yeah, this article is based on that idea. Because otherwise, I got excited, and I wrote like half of it. Actually, the first part I wrote, I was like, I'm going to write an article on neurodivergency. And the first thing I was like, I wrote a reason why churches are mean to people. And then I didn't do anything else for about 4 months. I was like, okay. But I knew that I had the deadline, and as the deadline kept getting closer, I found myself more and more motivated, like, no, because I want to be able to do a good job. I care about this, but if I didn't have that deadline, I wouldn't have had that motivation that then led to like, nope, I'm going to spend, like I've got 4 hours this morning, and I'm going to get 4 hours of writing and making sure that everything I say is backed up. You can have, this is your last one.
My motivation comes as a reaction to doing things I like, not the reverse. So I sort of have to get started doing the thing. And for me, it helps greatly to make it as absolutely fucking small and simple as possible, instead of a grand idea. Like one small thing and then it balloons out of control.
Go ahead.
I've just had to go out for a little, just come back. Yeah, that kind of like that one thing of just saw that slide there. Comfort becomes boring. I mean, that was kind of why I wanted to come to ConFuzzled. Like this is my first full one because I came for a taster last year because it was recommended for me, and I thought it would be like really like really scary, and like I would get really nervous if I was here. But I found that because I was surrounded by a lot of people who like, as you said, so there are some people in like the furry community that are like that have autism or like that ADHD.
Right.
It's like you're surrounded by like a lot of people that feel the same way that you do, and so it's maybe easier to mesh and like more supportive of you. And that's one thing that I really love about like the community, and why I'm really happy that I've decided to do ConFuzzled in fall this year.
When I have people who feel like they don't have any connections, the first thing I do is tell them, find a persecuted community, find a group of people that other people are mean to, that you fit in with, and engage with those people, because that's where you will find people who will support you, people who understand you, people that try to help you to be a better person. And that's terrifying advice for somebody who's afraid of people, is to then worry about getting in a persecuted community. But I've seen it work over and over again.
Thank you.
Hi.
So
Yeah.
I don't have time for this. These are lists of really cool skills that come. These are really neat things that come with ADHD and autism. But we are after our time already. Right, these are all things. You won't probably have all of them, but you'll be good at a lot of these. And that's true for everybody who has. You're really cute. Distractible. But yeah. But again, if you ask, this is in my article. This is it. I probably just send you the article. I think the article is better than the slides. Right. So we can go back to that at the end. But so we'll have, this is the official. If you want to write down how to get a hold of me, you can talk to me. You can come to the other sessions that I have tomorrow. I've got a web.
What's the name of the other sessions?
So I believe Mental Health Myths 101. I wrote it that way because I'm trying to make myself write more of them because there's a lot. And then also Sex 2.0. Mental Health Myths is at 12:30 in
Salisbury.
It says with a G.
Gladstone?
Gladstone.
Yeah.
The other one's in Gladstone too. It's at 5, 6. I think
7, it says.
It's at 7. Thanks. I have it in my calendar because I don't remember things like that. All right. Once everybody's had a chance, who wants to, we can do questions until they make us leave, or you leave because you have better things to do. Does anybody need this up for my email anywhere you go? Cool. So, yeah, you're welcome to leave whatever. You're always welcome to leave whatever. But if anybody has any questions, we can talk further, or you can just look at this list, or you can ask questions about what's on the list.